everyone, welcome to the Dyl Pickle Movie Network. I am Dylan Randazzo, and welcome back to another review as part of my series of summer 2024 catch-up, where every Monday, every Wednesday, and every Friday, I am reviewing a different summer movie in an effort to catch up from all the months I've missed of watching movies, and getting to talk about them here on the channel has been a real gift, and I'm very excited. Today, in particular, is a really exciting one, because as critics, our favorite jobs are not just to talk about the movies that everyone's seen and offer our own input, our own insight, our own lens to it, but also bring awareness to films that you may not have heard of, that you may not have seen, that you may not even know existed. And this is one of those examples of a film that I think could fit under that banner, which is Young Woman and the Sea. Now, I'm going to talk about Young Woman and the Sea, what it's about, what I felt about it, what I liked about it, what I didn't like, all that stuff, like a normal review. But I'm also going to kind of go into the big question of, why doesn't anyone know this exists? Like, this has popped up on Disney Plus, and like people probably see it, but they don't really register what it is. They don't know if it's new. They don't really know what it's about. There was barely any marketing for it. It had a small theatrical window, but that's only because the test screenings were so positive that they said, you know what, let's put it in the theaters. Let's give it a shot to kind of get some buzz. But then that buzz didn't come because they didn't market it well, and then it went right on Disney Plus at the end of the summer here in the midst of the Olympics, which we'll also talk about, and really didn't make any sort of splash. Pun intended. I just think this is one of the most bizarre films of the summer, which is why I wanted to talk about it, because I think it's also one of the better films of the summer, which is why I want to talk about it. The Young Woman in the Sea, or sorry, Young Woman in the Sea, there's no the before that, is directed by Joachim Ronning, whose previous works include Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man Tell No Tales. So again, not the best track record, but I think this is obviously his best film to date. But it follows the story of Trudy Ederle, the first woman to successfully swim the English Channel. You see her as a young girl, how she survives this terminal illness, and how that kind of fuels her to kind of have this motivation to do something great with her life. She joins a swim team with her sister, who is kind of the golden child, the one that is going to have these huge dreams and aspirations. But it turns out that Trudy ends up being the real star. She ends up being the real standout and has that gift for swimming that none of the other girls on the swim team have. And you kind of follow her career as she becomes an Olympian, but then further beat that record and become the first woman to ever swim the English Channel, which is just such a tough task. And I don't think people realize that. I mean, Naiad came out last year, and that was about, I believe, the oldest woman or the first woman to swim from Cuba to Florida, or Florida to Cuba. And those waters, obviously the sharks and the jellyfish, it's very, very dangerous. But the English Channel in particular is, I wouldn't say even more dangerous. We're not going to be comparing levels of danger because it's all dangerous. It's all very, very haunting and harrowing. But the English Channel, the thing that people don't realize is that once you get to a certain point, the ships can't sail alongside the swimmers anymore, because the water gets so shallow to where there's a large portion of the swim from the English Channel at the very end of the swim that is totally solo, where she just has to rely on her own instincts, her own self, her own guidance to finally make it to her destination. And I think this is one of the craziest things about these long distance swims is, like, yes, there are people monitoring you, there are people watching you, there are people who can give you water and food if you need it, but really it is up to yourself and your own stamina and your own willpower. And I think that's something that Naiad captured really, really well. The fact that, this was this older woman who was late in her life, but decided, you know what, I'm going to try it, I'm going to do it. And then she did it. And it's a really inspiring story. And this is no exception as well. This is a very inspiring story. Daisy Ridley from the Star Wars films plays Trudy Ederle. She's really, really empathetic and sweet and earnest and honest and vulnerable. All the things you expect from like a triumphant underdog story in an actress portrayal. But the difference between this and something like Naiad is that Naiad, it focuses more on the age, the fact that she's older and still doing this and accomplishing this. Whereas here, it's more about the feminist attitudes of the time and the fact that these men didn't think a woman could do it. And these men actually tried to sabotage this woman in doing it. This also follows her relationship with her coach, played by Christopher Eccleston, who you might recognize as Malekith from Thor: The Dark World, or from Doctor Who, of course, which is his most notable role. But he plays essentially this coach who tries to sabotage her. He gives her sleeping pills as she is swimming this big swim in the English Channel, which sabotages her first go at it. I mean, it is really ruthless to see how men either didn't respect women enough to have faith in the fact that they could do it, or were so threatened by the fact that women could stand amongst the men of the time that they needed to do what they could to sabotage because they were fearful, because they thought that was a threat, because apparently women being as good at men at something is a danger to society for some reason. And that's why I think this film is even more powerful than Nyad to me. Not to dismiss Nyad, I think it's a fine film. I think it's pretty base level what you'd expect from a sports biopic. And this does take some conventions as well. But I do think just the fact that it has this really underlying feminist empowerment attitude is really, really great to see because, I mean, this is a period piece as well. Nyad takes place a few decades ago, whereas this film takes place multiple decades ago in the times where women really weren't seen as equal to men. And it's just such an inspiring story as a feminist to see, this woman really kind of take her power back and strive to not just make a name for herself in her own area, in her own field, but just become like a legend in a way, just by doing something that no one thought she could do or no one had faith in the fact that she could do it. I also really love the attention to period detail because this is a period piece. You'll get a lot of great, lavish period piece costumes and sets. It all feels like you are of that era, but because it's Disney, it's kind of got that sheen to it where it's a little bit fantastical. It kind of romanticizes a certain period of time, but the actual themes themselves, the actual feminist messaging is still strong and earnest and honest, and that's what makes it really, really powerful. Which then brings me to my whole puzzling question of like, why did this not get marketed at all? Like, I know there were a few posters, a few trailers, maybe some word of mouth buzz, but really, I feel like of all the films this year that have come out this summer, this is the one that I think could be a big success and big champion and get a big word of mouth buzz and hype around it, but is not. And I think it strictly comes down to the marketing. I don't see any reason why a film about an Olympic swimmer, an empowering story about an Olympic swimmer, coming out in the same summer as the Paris Olympics, the Paris Summer Olympics, where swimming is a large part of that Olympics, and it is about an Olympic swimmer. It's a true story, but also starring Daisy Ridley, who is one of the most bankable stars. I mean, you look at the highest grossing domestic box office winner of all time is still Star Wars: The Force Awakens. It is the highest grossing, and obviously people went because it was Star Wars, not because it was Daisy Ridley. But you would think being in the highest grossing domestic movie ever, earning ever, that you would have some sort of name notoriety, and she does. You also have Christopher Eccleston, which brings in the British crowd as well. Fans of Doctor Who, fans of the MCU, who might remember him, even though his character is probably the least memorable in the MCU. But it's also Disney. I mean, Disney has the ability to market their films. We've seen it. They got Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine $1 billion each. So, like, they clearly know how to get the name out there and get the word of mouth out there and get people seeing their things. And also the fact that it's produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, the guy who gave us the Pirates movies, the guy who brought us Top Gun Maverick literally 2 years ago, which was also a smash hit and also was kind of this like underdog story in a way, and this nostalgic story in a way. I really don't know where this went wrong, why they didn't have the faith in this. And I even heard the test screenings were amazingly positive. That's why they got the week in theaters that they did, is because the test screenings were so good. So the fact that this has such positive test screenings, some of the most positive ever, even beyond Pirates and Bad Boys and Top Gun, like this is right up there in terms of the word of mouth of those test screenings. The fact that it stars Daisy Ridley, who is in the highest grossing domestic film of all time, the fact that it's about Olympic swimmer coming out during the Olympics, this should have been a slam dunk. And I think the fact that they hid this is one of the most baffling things, because yes, Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine were always going to get you more money because they're IP, they're franchise films. But why couldn't this be kind of the counter to that, where, these people are not necessarily comic book people. Oh, but there's this movie about this Olympic swimmer out. There you go. Or Inside Out 2. Well, I don't really want to necessarily see a kid's movie, where we don't have kids. We want to see something a little bit more mature. Well, here you go. Young Woman in the Sea. Like, I think this could have been such good counter programming for all those films, but it's not. It's not getting seen. It's not being talked about. And that's my goal here, is to get people talking about it. I don't even think this is the best film of the year. I think there are obviously cliches that it hits because it's a sports drama, because it's an underdog story. Like, you can obviously tell where this film is going at all times. Like, from the very get-go, you know exactly what's going to happen. Oh, this girl's sick. Oh, no, but she's going to survive. Oh, the older sister wants to be a swimmer, but the younger sister's underestimated. I wonder who's going to become the success story, the one that everyone believes in or the one that no one believes in. I wonder. Like, that kind of stuff that kind of makes your eyes roll and you're like, oh, that's a sports biopic for you. But think about how many great classic sports films fit conventions. And I think that's kind of what you expect when you go for a sports movie sometimes, is you want to just hit all those beats and, hit the template. I don't necessarily think it has to reinvent itself to be a crowd pleaser. It's the same thing with like slasher films. Like, exactly what you're going to get from a lot of slasher films. And when they subvert our expectations, it's really refreshing. It's really nice. But there's also nothing wrong with just like a very traditional slasher film. That's why so many get made. It is a little conventional, but again, it's conventionally crowd pleasing, which is the big puzzling thing here that I just don't really understand. I think if this had been released later in the year, maybe with more marketing and more push, maybe by a different studio who really believed in it, I do think maybe there's a chance Daisy Ridley even gets some Oscar buzz. I think it's a very crowded year this year, so I don't know if that would have been true, but she does give a really solid performance, and she is one of those buzzy stars who is like waiting for her big breakthrough to come in a more prestige front. Like, she's done a lot of franchise films. She's tried a few indie films, but now this could be a big breakout, but it's not because no one's seeing it. And I'm worried that like her career is not going to take off in the way it should because she's a very talented performer. And I wish this was kind of giving that vehicle. I mean, look at Nyad. It was not the most marketed film of last year. It wasn't the most seen movie of last year, but Netflix did enough to get eyes on it, especially on Annette Bening and Jodie Foster, and make some sort of buzz for it to where they got 2 acting nominations. Like, it's not tough. You have a crowd pleasing story. You have an audience who's going to want to eat that up. I mean, my Nana is a swimmer. She was a swim teacher for years. She loves swimming. She swims laps like 3 days a week. She loves all this stuff. She was, the kid who just wanted to swim because she loved it and then ended up becoming a competitive swimmer in that front and won a medal. And, I love hearing all those stories about her childhood. And like, that's the kind of audience that I think this will appeal to. Young girls or older women who see themselves and saw their, young childhoods through this character and through this story. Like, this is who the audience is for. And that audience is out there. There is an audience for this film. And I hope in some way, some shape, some form, some people can spread that word of mouth and get people to see it. Because, like I said, it's not my favorite movie of the year. I don't even think it's the best of its kind. I think, it hits conventional beats, but it is crowd pleasing. It is engaging. It is inspiring, especially from that feminist angle. And I think it deserves some eyes. So there's my review for Young Woman in the Sea and my puzzled reaction to all the mismarketing or lack thereof for this film. But if this can aid us some sort of marketing, then I'm happy to do my part here because I think it's a really charming story, a really empowering biopic that I think could be just a really great way to kill a few hours on maybe a rainy day or like first thing in the morning if you want to just sit down with a cup of coffee, want to take a break from the news and just want to watch something that's empowering and inspiring. This could be a great film for you. I watched it late at night one day after a long day at the beach, so it was nice to kind of just unwind and watch this movie about swimming. There's something about swimming too that is so tranquil and so relaxing in a way, even when it's competitive, even when there's that drive and that force and that stamina. You can tell the swimmer is getting exhausted, but just because you're in the waves, you're in the water, there's something lavish about it. I don't know. I just love it. I really think this could be a real hit if more people have their eyes on it. But I unfortunately don't think that's going to be the case because I think it's slipping so far under the radar. But that's my job here, and that's why I'm here to recommend this to you. So if you have seen this film, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. If you like this video, please like it and comment and subscribe and do all that stuff so I can keep this channel growing, because guess what? I also want eyes on this channel because I think I have a lot of really interesting things to say, especially in championing movies like this that are maybe a little less seen than your Deadpools and your Inside Outs. Nothing against those films. Those films have great merits as well, but I do think there's something about a movie like this that is small and mighty and still deserves a spot in the marketplace of cinema. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you Monday for some more reviews. I'm thinking we might be talking about Alien Romulus on Monday, but if I need a little bit more time to absorb it into my own brain, that might come Wednesday. So stay tuned. Something's coming Monday, and it's going to be a fun time. So thanks for watching, and keep enjoying the summer catch-up. I've been enjoying making these videos, so I hope you enjoy listening to them and watching them. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.